I know I wouldn't have made the same choice as you. You're my heroes. Thank you so much. So I want to talk about making money on the web. About 20 years ago, I learned this thing called HTML. And I was unstoppable. Everything could be rendered in HTML. I was making an HTML document for anything. I was making a website for anything I could think of. And I was putting it in this little hosting site called GeoCities. And after I got good at it, I started picking up CSS, I started picking up JavaScript, and I thought, I'm a high school student, how can I make money? Going out on dates isn't cheap. So I started looking at things like ads. And if you weren't around the web 20 years ago, ads didn't look the way they look today. Ads looked very, very different. There used to be banner ads, pop-up ads. Click ads weren't a thing. Actually, fun fact, the reason why we all have a pop-up blocker in our browsers is because when you went to a popular website, you used to have 7 other windows pop up with ads screaming at you. So the browsers developed pop-up blockers. Ads weren't exactly smart or targeted, right? And I wasn't a fan of having ads. I think I have this stigma with ads that spans those 20 years. Ads weren't a good thing to have on your website. So I looked at how could ads look like, or how does making money with your website looks like today. Spoiler alert, if you Google how to make money with your websites, it's all about ads. There's multiple different ways, but it's basically about ads. So I tried to get ads on my website today, right? And there's only like a couple of websites or a couple of aggregators that give you ads because ad networks have evolved to the point where 70% of the web is just one giant company that does ads. I'm sure you haven't heard about Google before, so I'm not going to go there, but I tried to put AdSense, Google's ads products, on my website. And when I tried to do this, I thought, what do you do when you want to do something new? You sign up for an account, and then they give you access to AdSense, right? But if you go on the AdSense website, the first step listed is not sign up for an account, is create the right type of website for Google AdSense. And I went, what do you mean the right type of website? Isn't every website the right type of website? Turns out it isn't. And my website wasn't the right type of website. Before you get into any sort of conclusion in your head, it was actually nothing dirty. It's called puns.dev, and it's a collection of the worst computer puns on the internet. The reason it wasn't the right type of content for AdSense is AdSense looks for a couple of things, none of which are sessions on page, like session time on page. It looks for how many visitors you've got, from which part of the world they are, because Americans can spend more. People from Romania can't spend that much. So if you have a Romanian website, it's not worth much to AdSense, things like that. But AdSense absolutely does not care about how much users stay on your page, because ads are designed to take people away from your websites. And my websites weren't massive. I just had a lot of engaged followers. Let's call them engaged followers. For example, puns.dev, the average session on page is 15 minutes. People stare at that for 15 minutes. And I don't have a lot of people, maybe 1,000 people a month. In order to be the right kind of website for AdSense, I would have had to have 100 times more people, no matter the session time, right? So the reason why ads behave this way, or ad networks behave this way, is because ads are designed to take you outside of wherever you are and make a purchase, right? They don't care what the content you're on is. They care about serving you something that you might be interested in so you can make a purchase, so they can make some money, so they can pay the website a little bit of that money, right? And if you look at some of the biggest advertisers in the world, you'll see that because they have so many options, they're having a hard time picking just one ad to show you. For example, websites that have a lot of traffic and it's not high quality, like the news, most of the news websites will have a lot of options for ads, and you'll see a bunch of them. And the reason why my content wasn't the right type of content is because I was targeting a niche, developers like myself who want to have a good laugh. right? And the ads have evolved to the point they're so smart, it's hard to evade them. Even if you have an ad blocker, how many people in the room use an ad blocker, right? Everybody in the room. I'm actually a believer in not seeing ads because ads are smarter than me. I'm old, I'm getting older by the day, and I'm not getting smarter, ads are getting smarter. So I have two ad blockers. I have one that sits on my router and blocks most common ad scripts, and I have one that sits in my browser. And even though I have multiple layers of ad blocking, while I was doing this talk, while I was researching for this talk, some of them escaped and I actually bought myself something pretty because the ads are getting smarter by the day. So I didn't put ads on my website because I'm not going to go into the ethics of whether or not ads are good or bad or whether or not you should use ads. It's just ads didn't want me. It's not that I didn't want ads didn't want me. So I didn't put ads on my website for almost 15 years now. But a couple of years ago, I ran into this thing, which was called the Web Monetization API. And it has its own website. It's called webmonetization.org. And if you go on the website, it says it's a JavaScript browser API that allows the creation of a payment stream from the user agent to the website. Typical developer talk, it means absolutely nothing. I went, what do you mean? It basically says your browser gives you money. Actually, no, your user's browser gives you, the website creator, money for the time they spent on page. Where ads are designed to take you away from the content and into the sales process so you can make money for the website. This actually says if you create quality content that's engaging and keeps people there, we're going to reward you for that. So the browser, the current implementation has a web monetization provider. The way it works is me, the user, sign up for a web monetization provider, and all the websites that I visit that are web monetized will get part of my money. The current provider it's attention-based. So the more I spend on page, the more the page makes. The current rate is like 36 cents an hour. So it's not a massive amount of money, right? As opposed to ads, though, the page gets that money instantly down to the microsecond that I spent on page, rather than if you've tried doing ads, the ads kind of get consolidated at the end of the month. And if you haven't made the threshold for actually getting that into your bank account, you don't get them in your account until you've hit a minimum with your ads. Web monetization works a bit differently. And I stumbled into this. And I thought, why hasn't this been on the web before, right? Why can't I make a living on the web with the web? If you're familiar with the Web Payments API, it's a new API from the W3C that says websites can ask you for money for e-commerce purposes. They can ask you for cart details. And the reason this couldn't be done with web monetization, or this couldn't be used with web monetization before, was because card payments don't start at 36 cents. No card network will give you a cent every time, right? So there was this new API being created, and the website says it's an open and native and automatic way to compensate creators, pay for API calls, and support crucial web infrastructure. Now, I wouldn't call Pons.dev crucial web infrastructure, but it was my creation and I could make money with it. And the way it works is I had to put a link tag on my website, a link tag that says relationship is monetization, and it points to something called the payment pointer. So if you think about how you identify your bank account, right? You have a bank account number. The problem with bank accounts, though, is you need to identify the bank, and the bank accounts all look different. I bank in the UK. I have 7 different numbers I have to send to anybody who needs to pay me. If I messed one of them up, it's a problem. Because this is web native, it said, why can't they be links? Why can't your whatever account details look like a link? So that's what the payment pointer is. It's a standard unto itself. It's not something the Web Monetization API developed. It's something they borrowed. There's a bunch of providers who give you payment pointers for your accounts. Right now, they're two of the most popular ones are digital wallets, Uphold and GitHub. Before I went on stage, I checked with both of them. Sadly, Uphold said, we won't be opening new accounts in Croatia for a little while. We're trying to get the banking license. So if you want a payment pointer today to try this out, you'll have to use GitHub instead. GitHub works in Croatia. And for a user, how does this, like for a website builder, right? I put a link tag in my website and it magically works. How does it work for my users, the users who are web monetized? It's actually very unintrusive. If you look at the top of my screen, you'll see a little green dot, and that means I'm web monetized, right? That's the experience from a user. It says the website you're on, you go on a website that has web monetization, the light goes green and you're web monetized. Of course, the web monetization provider, the current web monetization provider, there can be different ones, has a second layer. On top of the fact that you stream money to any website you're on, you can actually tip the page as well. If you like the content, or if you extra like the content, you can tip them as well. That works still through web monetization. And in order to enable all of that, the page just has to have the one link tag. Now, the web monetization API is extremely, extremely new. I can't stress how bleeding edge it is. Last week, literally last week, the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, had their technical plenary. So we went there and we presented the new version of the Webonization API. And up until today, you used to have something called meta tags. From today, both meta tags and link tags are supported for monetization. Because of the browser implementation, the extension implementation hasn't caught up to the spec. If you're developing today, I'd strongly encourage you to use both of those at the same time to kind of be sure. Now, I keep talking about the JavaScript API, and I keep showing you HTML, right? That doesn't make sense. And that's because the lowest level of monetization is designed to be if you want to pay me, you can pay me. If you want to send me money for my work as a sort of a thank you, you can do that. But it also supports kind of bigger use cases like, I'd like to show you something special because you're paying me, right? I'd like to say thank you in a bigger way. Or I'd like to only show you content if you're paying me. And for that, there's a JavaScript API which you can use to actually figure out if you're getting money from your visitors, and then you can do something with it. The old JavaScript API was a property of the document, and it used to live on document. But that's not happening anymore. The new version of the spec, the new version that came out last week, actually uses the native link tag and adds a monetization event on it. So if you're familiar with link tags, or if you think about link tags, the difference between a meta tag and a link tag is a meta tag lives on the document. A link tag can live on a document, inside the document, inside the nested iframe. So technically, this allows you to monetize different portions of the website for different creators. If you have a simple blog like me, I don't care about that. I'm only monetizing myself. We have a lot of people who are monetizing YouTube videos, or they're monetizing the news and stuff like that, and then you have multiple people collaborating on a piece of content, or multiple parts of the page created by different people. And the new JavaScript API allows you to manage the monetization of all of that. The documentation for it is so new, it's still in preview. It's being merged. Hopefully, it's being merged next week. Fingers crossed that actually happens. In the meantime, you can go to the link on my slides. I'll publish my slides on Twitter. And you can go there and see the docs for the new version. As I was saying, this is being developed at the W3C. Up until recently, we incubated it in the Web Incubator community group. It is evolving to be its own thing at the W3C, but it all happens on GitHub. So if you have any comments or feedback, or if you've used this and you like it, please go on GitHub and kind of let us know. We're trying to see the curve of adoption and what people think about it. In terms of browser support, right now there's only one native browser that supports it, and that's Puma browser, a mobile browser. But all major browsers have this extension which you can install, and that enables web monetization for the browsers. So both Firefox and Chrome have version 0061 that's coming out this week, and Edge has actually a newer version of the extension that's been there for a while. I think last year in October, the Web Almanac is this state of the web report type of deal. Looked at 8 million websites and tried to figure out how many of the 8 million websites had web monetization on it. It's 0.03% of websites have web monetization on it. So all in all, maybe like 2,000 websites or so have web monetization enabled out of 2 million. But you can see the adoption kind of going steadily up. How is this possible, though? If I wanted to send you 36 cents now today, it would be impossible. The only reason this is possible today is because of a new payment mechanism called Interledger. And I actually have a little video that explains Interledger much better than I could in like a minute and a half. Hopefully, if I have audio, we'll all hear what Interledger is and how this...
In our modern world, technology moves at light speed. But why has our financial infrastructure failed to keep up with the pace of change? The Interledger protocol was created to make sending money across the internet easy. We envisioned a payments network that acts as a bridge between anyone and the entire world. Today, when we send an email, we take it for granted that once we hit send, the email will appear in the recipient's inbox almost instantly. It doesn't matter if you're sending from one email provider to another. It works seamlessly in a matter of seconds, not days. The Interledger protocol is designed so you can send money as easily as you can send an email. It's a network that reflects our interconnected world, accessible to all, regardless of identity, geography, or income. One that's more inclusive, without minimum transaction amounts or costly transfer fees. The closed networks of the past keep people disconnected. Our mission is to bring our financial infrastructure into the 21st century and give everyone equal access to a global financial network.
So the reason this had to be created is it's 2022, and if you're trying to move money across a bunch of places where you have money, you're having a lot of issues. Think about the places where you store money. Me, myself, I have money in at least 4 places, like PayPal, maybe I have a Venmo account, maybe I have a bank account. I even keep money in Starbucks. If you think about Starbucks, they have those little cards. I even have a Starbucks card with money on it. Moving money from one end to the other with my accounts is very complicated. Moving money from one of my accounts to somebody else's accounts becomes incredibly difficult. If we have the same bank account, it's easy and cheap to move money because money never actually leaves the bank. If we have different banks, for example, my shitty bank in the UK with the Bank of America, it's cheap, but it's not easy anymore. Bank accounts look different for Americans and British people, and I'm guessing here in Croatia, they look even more different than that. The UK doesn't even know what an IBAN is. So if I want to move money from 2 systems that don't know each other, they don't talk to each other, for example, my shitty little bank in the UK with my mom's shitty little bank in Romania, that becomes not cheap. Whenever I send money home, it's a 3-day process, and I lose a little bit of money on fees. If I try to do this to Nigeria, for example, it can take up to 6 days, and I can lose 18% of that same money because of transfer fees. So putting this as the basis for webization, we tried. It didn't work out. If I try to move money from something that's not connected, like my Starbucks account and my mom's shitty little bank, it's absolutely impossible. There's no way that works, right? But all of these people are places where you store money. We call places where you store money ledgers. And it's not ledgers as in crypto. The reason I'm on the web stage and not the web 3 stage is because ledgers before crypto used to be these giant books of accounts. Your bank had one, your grocery store had one, and basically they record your transactions and they hold the value you have with your ledger runner. ledger provider. Interledger was designed as a protocol to kind of bridge the gaps between all of these places where you hold money. And it's actually based on the TCP/IP protocol. So the same way the TCP/IP protocol makes you package data and send it across a network of computers, the Interledger protocol packages money and sends it across money networks, right? The biggest network that's running the TCP/IP protocol is called the Internet. The biggest network that's running the Interledger protocol we call Interledger. And the protocol was designed to make payments move like the Internet, make money move like the Internet. When you send an email, the only thing you need to know is their email address. You don't need to know 7 different things about the person you're sending emails in order to send emails. Email happens instantly, and the Interledger protocol kind of wants to do that with money, and that made it perfect as the option for weaponization. The protocol itself was developed in like 2015, so it's been around for a little while by these 2 people, Stefan Thomas and Evan Schwartz. And when they created it, they looked at the TCP/IP protocol and they tried to recreate it for money. The biggest difference between the TCP/IP protocol and the Interledger protocol is, in TCP/IP, when you've lost a couple of packets of data, nobody gets upset, you resend them. When you deal with money and you've lost a little bit of money, everybody gets upset. So there's no way to actually lose a packet of money in the Interledger protocol. It's designed to mimic the TCP/IP protocol kind of one-for-one. You have the same levels in the network, called slightly different, but it's also made to mimic the banking system. So you have in banking something that's called messaging and clearing, and the Interledger protocol is a messaging and clearing protocol, and settlement, or the actual physical movement of money, is deferred to whatever banks use. Some banks will use gold as the default standard, some banks will use IOUs, and some banks will just exchange accounts at the end of the month. So settlement is not part of the protocol and is designed in a way in which it can be anything. Because it can be anything, it can work with all of these different ledgers, kind of as the rails between them. But one of the unintended consequences of this protocol is a packet of money to transfer from one end to the other, no matter how much money is inside of it, will always be the same amount of work for a computer. In the banking system, moving $10 versus moving $1,000 is actually different. On Visa's network or on card networks, because moving $1 costs them quite a bit of resources, they can't handle more than 100,000 transactions. So the way they got around this limitation, they made a minimum of transactions. In Interledger, it doesn't really matter. It's a byproduct. The fact that you move $1 or the fact that you move the 100th part of a cent, exactly the same amount of power required. So then Interledger is kind of enabling this micropayments to happen in the browser, and that's why weaponization is built on the Interledger protocol. Now, if you've liked anything I've told you here, you can play with weaponization today. If you'd like to help build weaponization or make it better, we're actually having a little get-together in New Orleans in a couple of months. If you'd like to join us in New Orleans at the Interledger Summit, I'd be happy to have you. Otherwise, you can get involved with us at the foundation and with the people behind the weaponization API, either on Slack or on one of our many, many communities. And I feel like the speaker behind me is kind of eager to start, so I'm going to stop here. I'm going to thank you all. But if you'd like to try this out from a user perspective, as somebody who will give money to the websites you're on, if you reach out on Twitter, I have my Twitter handle there. If you reach out on Twitter, I have some coupon codes from one of the monetization providers. Those would give you $30 to kind of give away to websites for the next 6 months, plus $100 extra to kind of see that tipping feature that I showed you in my demo. Thank you so much.